So I really grew up in the Super Nintendo era, and now at that time graphics, that wasn't the thing. Like, it didn't matter if graphics were good. You just played a game because Mega Man X was fun. But there was one moment as a kid when I remember playing a game that is my favorite game to this day. And it was this moment right here. When you see this just floating island and these wonderful little waterfalls flowing off the edge of these floating islands, it was Chrono Trigger. That moment was so great. Not because the graphics were amazing, but they were for their time. The music was awesome, yes, but it was the story that involved these far-off places and time travel, and did time travel well, and this floating palace of Zeal. And this is one of my favorite images of all time, which is why when I saw Noria, I knew I had to play this game. The idea of a floating palace in the sky in a Euro game. What more could there be? So, today, me, Bryan Drake, at the latest retro on the Dice Tower here, we're going to dive into Noria and see if it evokes those feelings that walking around with Robo and Frog and Magus. And if you have no clue what I'm talking about, it doesn't matter, because we're going to see if it's good regardless. Let's take a look right now. Sophia Wagner's Noria from Stronghold. So this is your direct user interface right here. It's this awesome looking wheel with 3 tiers, the lower tier, the middle tier, and the top tier. Each of them have a different number of little nodes in them to put your little discs in. These discs are where your actions come from. Each of the actions do a different thing down here. On your turn, you'll do 3 actions, sometimes up to 4, but never more than 4, based on bonuses. These are the regular sides. If you flip these little tokens over, there's an upgraded side on the back, which will allow you to do, if an action calls for 2 things to be able to be done, you can do both of those things, or you can do one of them twice. Or if it's a single type action, you can do that action twice. Only once, so you can never use more than 4 actions in a turn. Now I am confused though, because I scoured the rule book, and I just wanted to point this out. I scoured the rule book and I could not find this rule that I saw in a rule video. The rule video claims that you have to have 3 adjacent actions, which currently you can't. It's not possible to do that. These aren't adjacent, so I'm not really sure on the clarification on that. But the way we played it and the way that it seems in the rule book is that you just do any 3 actions in your bottom tier here that are active. That's what these little active sections are. When your turn is over, you'll rotate each one time. So that would be just like this for the bottom half, or the bottom tier, just like this for the middle tier, and just like this for the top tier. That would bring new things active. The only ones that will stay would be these middle 2. This one will rotate around to where it'll be not active. So you see that each turn you have is different, but there's an action that you can take called the Nightshift, where you can adjust these wheels and you can adjust these tokens here just a little bit by paying one of the game's resources of knowledge. So you could potentially either switch some of these 2 tokens around, or you can shift this ring or that ring 1 space. Kind of lets you get some actions that you need to be in play. So here's an overview of the actual game board itself, and you can see that fantastic Michael Menzel floating island art back there. These are all different facets of the game that we're going to talk about in a little bit. But we're going to start up here, because this is where the rule book starts, and I love the fact that it starts like this. Up here in these tracks. These tracks are how you win the game, and the rule book is kind enough to explain that very early on, that hey, this is how you win the game, and this is how you need to teach people to win the game. This is just a track. Basically, you pay the goods that are on the left to move up the track. Your score is calculated by the level. It's hard to see these numbers, but it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 times the amount of this little Senate section here. Now what does that mean? So throughout the game, there will be a phase when you're allowed to pay a certain amount of knowledge based on this number of knowledge tokens showing on the round tracker. Each of these will be covered, and as they get unlocked, the more of these cogs that are showing, the more expensive this action gets. But effectively, you'll pay the cost to move down one of these gray tokens. So let's just say the yellow wants to move this down. The amount of points that your track, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4 tracks, the amount of points that each track is worth is this number on the left. Sorry, let me move the 0 in frame. This number on the left multiplied by the level you are. So currently it's 0 times no matter what you are. So let's just say you do it the first time. Well, then you'll put this down here. Now this black track here, the one that uses obsidian, is 2 times the number of your level. When you do that, you will pull a cube off the furthest right of another track. So this is where some cutthroatness gets in, because now you're going to want to pull that one, obviously, because this is the one that this person is going for. So now theirs can never be more than 6 times the level they're on. That's a little confusing, but just think about it like this. Whatever is showing is how many points you multiply times the level you're on. So at the end of the game, this is 2 times whatever level they're on. Had this happened, and you keep moving these out of the game, this is now worth 4. Do it again, this is worth 6. Do it one last time, this is worth 8. And notice, unless this was already placed, this will never be more than 2. It could be potentially no more than 0 times the level. So this would be 8 times the level. So let's just say they're here at level 5. This would be 40 points for this track. That is how you score victory points. There's no other way to score victory points. Well, so what's the point of the resources and all that sort of stuff? The point of the resources is that this is the cost to move up this track. So in order to move up this track, this would cost you 2 obsidian. 2, 4 obsidian, 4 obsidian, 4 obsidian, 5 obsidian, 6 obsidian. These would cost you energy or mycelium. So you would have to spend 2 either or. This one with the non-equal sign shows that you have to spend at least 2 types of this to move up this track. These, I'm going to move these out of the way for now, just because we're clear on what this does. These are different. These are goods, not resources. The goods come from your warehouses. You also get a piece that looks kind of like this down here. Not kind of like it, it's exactly like this. You will house 6 warehouses in your player color. So let me just show you what that looks like right now. This little tableau holds 7 factories. These factories will get placed on the islands, which we'll talk about in a minute. When you place a factory on an island, you take the topmost, and then there's an arrow that you follow to go to the next one, and place it, let's just say here for propellers, you would place it and say, okay, well, this is now my factory. You would then get 2 warehouses, because there's 2 squares showing there, that produce propellers. So we'll come back to the islands in a minute, just know that happens. You'll then go over and take 2 of these propeller warehouses and stick them on one of the nodes here, because there's 4 types of on this side, it's reversible. We played it the other way. Here on this side, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 types of goods and 3 types of resources. These propellers, notice the cost to get a propeller. You would have to spend an obsidian and an energy in order to get a propeller. Now these will sit next to each other here. One of the actions allows you to produce, and when you produce, you can either produce all of one good or one of every good. So it's an interesting little mechanic there. When you have these propellers, you then could spin the propellers. You would flip them over when you have them, just to show that you have them. You could spin these propellers to then move up this track back up here at the top, which requires goods, not resources. When you spin them, you just flip them over, but you keep the warehouse. So you permanently have that warehouse down there. Up top, you'll notice the other track. These are just more upgraded goods. They're a little bit more specialized and expensive, but you notice that their max value is worth 16 points times the level versus 12 versus 8 versus 8. So these are both worth 8. But that's the main difference there. These 2 tracks down here, this is the point value of the level you're at of your highest token, because you can potentially 4. That's what these are here for. This is the point value times the level of your lowest one. So just ways to get points, basically, just kind of evens things out for your lowest one. You might have your lowest one might do really well, even though it's not that great compared to what everybody else is doing. The other thing is there are ships. Your ships will sit in your tableau. They'll just kind of hang out to the side. I'm not going to put them there, but they just kind of neatly notch into there. Each ship you have determines how many of each type of resource you get when you do the resource action. Now let's take a look at the actions now, just so we can understand kind of what's going on here. So for the sake of clarity, I've pulled everything else off the board that we've already talked about that's not essential right now, except for your reference guide, which is actually the bottom of your wheel is the reference guide, and these market tokens here. Let me sit them back where they go. When you set up the game, the top 3 are free. They're always free. They don't have a cost. The bottom ones here have a cost, and these get set up in a random order. So for this game, we've got them set up like this. You can have differences, obviously. Different actions. So when you have a bonus token, that's this one. This bonus token lets you perform an action that's been activated again. So that's where the up to 4 times comes from. This one is the city action. This one allows you to either move up those tracks we've been talking about by paying the cost, so you would use one of your actions to do that, Or the second thing, it would let you go to the black market, or the market, it's not really black market, the market over here. And basically you would pay the cost of the resources in order to get a new token to go on your wheel. And what that would look like is basically the new token at the end of that round will just sit, until the end of the round will just sit in the middle, at which point you'll get to place it out on your wheel after you've already moved your wheel around, so you could potentially have it for the next round. But that's the two actions there. You pay the cost associated for that tool. It would have been 4 different of the not different, but 4 total resources of the green, the pink, or the black, which is obsidian, mycelium, and energy. Over here, this is the tool one. This allows you to upgrade a token by flipping it to its other side, which allows you to do, obviously a better version of that, like we talked about. Or the produce action, which is what I was talking about earlier, all of one good or one of all goods. That's what that is in your warehouses. That's what this one does. The ships, the energy ones, these here, they give you a token or a resource per ship you have of that color. So if you have 3 of the mycelium ships, every time you do the mycelium action here, you will get 3 mycelium. If it's upgraded to its backside, you potentially get 6, because it's 2 times the amount that you would get. Over here's the journey one, and I really like this one. This is really cool. First of all, if there's not an island flipped up, you get to flip up an island. Now, this is what this looks like. You then put ships on the island per player count minus these arrows, and it'll tell you what that is. But let's say this is put a black ship 2 less than the player count of the game. So in a 2-player game, you're still always going to put 1, but if you're playing 3 players, you put 2 green ships here and still just 1 black ship there. These are the options here for the warehouses. So you have propeller warehouses and these big laser looking thing here's some sort of engine. What you do is you can then take your token, you have an extra one of these, and move on to this island. When you do, you can either, as this action shows, place a warehouse or take a ship, or if you have it upgraded, do both. The cost to go to the island is a resource per wooden bit that's already there. So someone else's bit that's there, you'd have to pay a resource. That goes the same, by the way, up here for this city action. It's the cost to the left plus a wooden bit, a resource per wooden bit on the level you're going to. So just know that. That's the journey action as well. You can upgrade the bonus action and potentially do something twice as well. But those are the main actions of the game. There's a cool variant though, that as these islands get put out, it doesn't matter where you are. You can go to any of the islands. It's not like that. But the variant is that you actually lay them out in a circle, and that you have to go from here to here to here to get to the other island. So it's pretty cool. You cannot stay in the same place if you do the journey action and just put another warehouse down. You actually do have to move. But notice the art on these islands, it's all different. So this one's got some mycelium ships and obsidian ships. This one's all obsidian. Look at the resources in the island. I think that's such a cool artistic choice. Let's see if we can show one for energy. Yep, so we've got energy and mycelium here and just pure energy. I love that. I think that's brilliant. Excellent, excellent art choices. The other things you can do, again, that Nightshift mode I mentioned, when you get these knowledge tokens, you can spend 2 knowledge to switch 2 of your tokens around, or you can spend 1 knowledge to twist your bottom or middle row 1 space. The knowledge also you get, notice on your tableau here, for each factor you have removed, you get knowledge at the end of your turn based on that right there. Another substitute thing, any good is worth 2 knowledge, any specialized good is worth 3 knowledge, and 3 knowledge can get you any resource if you're in a bind. So the 4 phases of the influence phase, that's where you do the night shifting and these actions here. Second would be the actions, that's where you pick your actions based on your wheel. Third is the politics phase, which is where you pull these cubes off based on the amount of times you want to do that action. Again, it costs you the amount of knowledge cubes showing. Again, there would normally be turn markers here, and as they get pulled up, each one of these markers that is showing is how much it costs. You can do that as many times as you want. The first one is a single point cost, the second one is double, the third one is triple that cost. So it becomes 2, then 4, then 8. To do that multiple times in a row. So there is a danger in that. And the last but not least is the administration phase. This is when you'll add your new tokens to your wheel as well as spin your wheel. The game ends depending on the amount of players at this turn. Everybody will finish, and then the game scores based on those tracks at the top. Whoever wins obviously has the highest point value. That's the game. So that's Noria. That's how you play. That's what you do. that's the game, pretty much in a nutshell right there. Floating islands, resources, ships, building factories and markets and all this sort of stuff. The question is the game any good? I have some mixed feelings about this game. I really love, let's talk about what I love first. The art is fantastic. It's Michael Menzel. It's amazing. This is very evocative of Chrono Trigger. That's why I mentioned that earlier. I love this art. I was instantly sold on the game just from the front cover. And sometimes that's a bad thing. This one is not though, because every bit of the game is beautiful, from the box cover to your own individual wheel, to the board, to the fact that you get a poster basically on the back of the board because it's so pretty. To just the little resources. I love the fact that the resources aren't just they're not just random things. There's notes in the rule book about why they were picked, for these these resources to be what they are. And I think that's really smart. Each of the islands has kind of like a specialty look to it, whether it's more energy or more obsidian or more with the other, it's really neat the way that looks, and I think that's great. The little ships are cool. I like the fact that you flip over the warehouses when they're full. I like the track at the top, the way it looks. Gameplay, let's talk about, and this is where I have some issues. Gameplay, I feel like the game's a little bit too long. However, you can't make it shorter because the way to get victory points is to move up that track, and in order to get up the track, you have to do all the other stuff in the game because you have to get the resources to move up the track. But you also need the time to get the knowledge tokens to move those cubes off in that phase, in the intrigue phase, or you know what I'm talking about, the phase where you move the cubes up or off the board to make your track better. So you need those turns, but it just felt like it was a little bit long there towards the end with all those different turns. But again, maybe if I kept playing it more and more and more, I would understand that, know that going in. But the other thing that I had an issue was I'm not sure why, and I'm sure because I didn't play test this game, I'm not entirely sure, but the whole thing about you can only do 4 actions total, which basically limits your upgraded actions to being only a couple times per turn. That felt weird to us because I don't know why. Like, and again, that would lengthen the game longer. I understand that if you were able to do just boom, 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 boom. But it kind of disincentivizes or de-incentivizes the whole idea of using the tool to upgrade. It seems like you would almost always use it to produce at that point. So that I'm still not sure of why that is the case. Now I would love to hear why that is the case, because again, it's not a deal breaker for me going into the next game knowing that, but just it's kind of one of those things where we weren't crazy about the idea that you couldn't use those upgraded tools multiple times. But those are really my only gripes. As far as the gameplay itself, I love the wheel building mechanic. I think that's fantastic. The idea of getting your wheel and then being able to manipulate the wheel, that was smart to give you the options to manipulate that wheel using the Nightshift moves. I think that's so neat, and there's not a lot of games that do that where it's kind of wheel placement or wheel action selection, so you move those wheels, and that's just really cool. I think that it gets top notch, and I really want to play this a lot more just to dive into it, to just really work on the strategy and work on the game itself, because I like it. It's a really, really neat game, and so I think you should check it out. It's a very unique game. It's pretty, it's unique, it's got a lot of fun mechanics. You just know that it can be a little bit long with all those turns that are involved, but I like the options that this game gives you. So that's Noria from Sophia Wagner and Stronghold, and then Spielberg Games. It's a win for me. I like it, barring those few flaws that I found with it. Other than that, it's a great game. This is Bryan Drake with the latest retro here on the Dice Tower. Make sure to check out our other videos on the Dice Tower. There's a link that I'll put here with my other videos on the Dice Tower if you want to see more of what we do, or you can support us on Patreon here at patreon.com/TheLatestRetro. Till next time, we'll see ya.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at DicetowerNetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.